Section 40A subsection 2 was over. Now let's start with section 40A subsection 3. Payment in cash. I want you all to just memorize all this, because when I'll be teaching the sum, I'll put a reference for you all. Just don't worry. Take down the notes and please try to memorize it. If you find it difficult, still try to memorize it, because when I'll be solving the sum, it will help you a lot. Payment in cash, payment to the relative was done in the previous video. Now let's see the payment in cash. Payment in cash up to rupees 20,000 per person. Mark my words, per person, per day invoice is allowed. That is, more than 20,000 will not be allowed as expenses. Payment means it is an expenses. Expenses which I taught from 30 to 37. All such expenses which are in cash, if paid to a person, rupees 20,000 per person per day invoice will only be allowed. If 21,000 is paid, it won't be allowed as expenses. Okay, if it is paid in cash, is what I was writing is allowed as expenses. Okay, last, more than rupees 20,000 per person per day invoice, then account pay check, if paid by account pay check, account pay cross check, then it is allowed as expenses. Otherwise not allowed as expenses. I hope you have not understood how to read this chart. So first learn how to read this chart. Payment in cash, that is an expenses. If payment is cash is done up to rupees 20,000 per person per day, per invoice, per day per person per invoice, then such expenses will be allowed. Such expenses will be allowed as expenses. Okay. If more than rupees 20,000 per person per day per invoice is paid, then it will be allowed if it is paid by account pay cross check. Otherwise it will not be allowed as expenses. Are you getting this much? So section 40A3, there is nothing to remember about this, because the question in the exam, there will be no theory about all this section. You have to just remember, because if just take this example. I'll show you. Wait. If section 30 expenses, these expenses are paid in cash. If it is paid 25,000 in cash, then such expenses will not be allowed, because there is a limit of rupees 20,000 per person per day per invoice. Okay, but if such 25,000 is paid in different invoices, if at different dates, then such will be allowed. Like, take an example. I'll give an example. This example is quite common in the practice manual. Commission. Wait, I'll write with pencil. Pen. Sorry. Commission paid to engineer, is one person, on 31st Jan, that is per person per day rupees 25,000, then such 25,000 will not be allowed as expenses. But if such expenses were rupees 20,000, such 20,000 would have been allowed. Now, if the commission paid to the engineer on 31st January rupees 25,000 is paid by account pay cross check, such will be allowed expenses, because it is paid by cross check even though it is more than 20,000. Okay, because the what the government think is the SSE will try to manipulate by paying all the expenses in cash and show more expenses, and he might, like, if he pay commission to the engineer, he may give 25,000 and ask later the engineer to please give the 5,000 more that I've paid you, please give it back to me, and keep it as a black money with him and spend it somewhere else. So 20,000 per person per day per invoice is only allowed. If you want to pay more than 20,000, then you have to pay by account paycheck, and the such expenses will be allowed, because bank transactions are recorded in the passbook. So the passbook statement will automatically show all the details about your transaction to the assessing officer, and the assessing officer will find it comfortable to check your account. The assessing officer can't say that you have done such expenses. Such expenses are not allowed. Okay, there is nothing much to teach over here. This all have practical implication, but there is a need of theory, so that's why I have taught you over here. Please copy it down. There is an exception for this that I will be teaching you. I hope you all have copied this much. Write exception. Better write exemption. Exemption under rule 6DD. Exemption under rule 6DD. What does rule 6DD say? This is also very important. Please put a star mark over here, because this part will come now and then in your practice manual. That time you will feel what is this rule 6DD. So better let's teach it first only. What does rule 6DD says? If payment made to transport operator up to rupees 35,000 per person per day by cash will be allowed as expenses. Okay, so what does the exception says? Exception under rule 6DD says, if the payment made to the transport operator up to rupees 35,000 per person per day by cash will be allowed as expenses. Similarly, following expenses will be allowed. See, if payment exemption means write in bracket more than 20,000 paid in cash to the following person. This was first was the transport operator. Second, payment made to government / bank or FI. If you have made payment to the bank or government or any financial institution, it's not on or not feeling well, this will be the last video for me today, for my recording for today. Payment made to the government, bank or financial institution, then if more than 20,000 is paid in cash, then it will be allowed as expenses. There is no limit like 35,000. If you have paid 1 lakh also, then 1 lakh rupees paid in cash will be allowed as expenses. Okay. Third, payment made to employee whose terminal benefit is up to rupees 50,000. Here also there is a limit, so put a star mark on the first and third. Fourth, payment made by way of credit card. Fifth, payment made for purchasing agricultural products. That's it. This is quite enough. So what is Rule 6DD says? Rule 6DD says if the following expenses are done, even though the expenses are paid in cash for more than rupees 20,000 will be allowed as expenses. So if payment made to the transport operator up to rupees 35,000 per person per day by cash will be allowed as expenses. If more than 35,000, then it won't be allowed. Payment made to the government or bank or financial institution by way of cash will be allowed. By way of cash, that is more than 20,000, will be allowed as expenses. Payment made to employee whose terminal benefit is up to rupees 50,000 by cash will be allowed as expenses. Payment made by way of credit card will be allowed as expenses. Payment made for purchasing agriculture product by paying more than rupees 20,000 to the from whom you are purchasing the agriculture product will be allowed as expenses. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. I'm feeling very ill today. This is the last video for today. I'll upload all the 5 videos that I have made. I'm sorry, but as soon as possible I'll start uploading 40 videos. I need to take rest. Bye.